Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
It's no secret that with the baby boomer generation reaching full retirement age, that we're seeing more retirements in the U.S. than ever before. As a record number of employees begin to exit the workforce, many are left wondering, what will be the true impact be? Well, welcome everyone to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. Today, Philip Statler, the founder and president of Statler Financial Services, is here with me to fill us in on the trends facing many of our country's biggest industries during this major period of retirement and how those trends could impact you and your retirement. Philip, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing well, Danielle. Happy Labor Day weekend, as we're going to talk about people that are in the labor force getting ready to retire. It's a great weekend for this show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our topic today because, yes, on this Labor Day weekend, we're discussing something that many people should really tune into. So we've discussed how there seems to be more retirements than ever in our country these days, Philip. So what exactly are the numbers on that? And then is that really staggering as it seems?
It really is, and staggering is probably a pretty good word for it. It's a lot. And the numbers are extraordinary just because of the timing, right? We're kind of the end of the baby boomer session. And just to give you an idea, Danielle, it's like 4.1 million Americans are going to turn 65 this year. That's incredible. And then it's not just this year, but it's the next 3 years from now until the end of 2027. Over 4 million Americans are going to turn 65.
Wow.
Now, we don't know that all of them are going to retire, right? Because like me, I'm not going to retire at 65. I'm going to keep on going. But there are a lot of people in the labor force. I mean, you can think about it. Construction people, entertainment people, there's a lot of people that are tired of working. They are just looking forward to the time that they can check out and be on retirement. And so how many, we don't know, but it's going to be a large group of them will actually go ahead and retire now that they're Medicare age. So, we can't predict it exactly, but I just know that more and more people are actually just deciding it's time to go ahead and retire. Now they're Medicare eligible. I think that we'll see a lot of them over the next couple of years.
Philip, I have to imagine that so many retirees leaving the workforce is really a major concern, especially for social services used by retirees. And if that trend is going to continue, won't that strain on retirement services only get more severe?
Danielle, that's absolutely true. And that's why I would suggest that people really and truly start planning now if they haven't already. Because you just don't know, right, what services you're going to need. I mean, they already talk about Social Security and how it's stretched. And my feeling is that they'll fix it before it blows up. But nobody knows that for sure. That's just my belief. But believe me, it's not everybody's out there, right? So, but the number one thing I will tell you, Danielle, is just that whole process tells me that people need to have an income plan. And that's why I developed the core retirement design to help people design the retirement they always dreamed of. And that starts with a risk assessment, continues with a tax assessment, and it follows up. The final step is putting together that income plan. Folks, listen, if you don't know where you are when it comes to retirement, where your income is going to come from, how much income you can take without having to blow up your portfolio, give us a call, 863-877-1188. Let us help you with our core retirement analysis. That's 863-877-1188.
So today we're talking about the historic wave of workers entering retirement. We've spoken about how this could really impact individual retirees, but let's now take some time to talk about how it's going to affect the overall economy. So now, Phil, which industries would you say do you think will be the most affected by this trend that we're talking about today?
Well, I think it obviously it spreads across all industries. That folks are entertaining the possibility of retirement. And so when we look at those industries, I think the number one, or let's look at probably the top 4 or 5 that are going to be most affected. The wholesale trade industry, distributors, the middle guy that takes stuff from the manufacturer and then gets it out to wherever the end result is, kind of the wholesale group. Then the repair and maintenance group, along with religious, civic, and professional organizations. That group of folks. Financial activities people that are in my industry, financial advisors. I mean, we're seeing it across the board that with a mass exodus to retirement at this point in time. But you also see it in the investment banking business, insurance companies, and real estate firms. And not to mention the public administration, like government jobs. I mean, those folks have a pension. So, once they qualify for that pension, at 65, they're looking to go ahead and retire. So, 25% of the workers across those industries are 55 years or older. And so that could be a mass exodus, especially in those industries, Danielle.
That's right. And Philip, you're mentioning a lot of really good things here. And so I'm interested in what sort of problems could come about with so many workers leaving these very important industries? It seems like a huge impact.
Well, Danielle, I think it will be a big impact. I mean, because we're talking about some of the most established, wisest workers exiting the industry. I mean, these folks have put in 3 or 4 decades, some of them at the same company, but definitely within the same industry. The knowledge they have is incredible, and they're going to be leaving. And when they leave, that means that it's going to take more time and resources to train up their replacements. And that means it's a newer, younger workforce. And that also means that most likely productivity across the board could diminish, not to mention the fact that it's harder and harder as a business owner. I know this is harder to find people that want to and are willing to actually work. And so you add those on top of the other issues, it's going to be a tough time for American businesses.
And Philip, let's also talk about how this big wave of retirement really creates pressure, right, in 2 different areas. One, by the actual influx of new retirees into the system, and then one by the loss of seasoned workers across these industries. Explain, what does this really mean?
Well, think about it. Let's just look at one industry, healthcare. So now you've got all of these people retiring and on Medicare. And you've got the other side of that coin, you've got healthcare. And you've got a mass exodus out of healthcare, which means there's less people working, but yet you've got more people that need healthcare. That could be disastrous. And so we've got that issue where we've got more and more people drawing Social Security, more and more people on Medicare, seeking the services of healthcare professionals and other areas in retirement. And yet those industries are suffering because everybody retired. And so there's going to be a lag in service. It's going to be a tough little situation there over the next few years until we can get our workforce built back up, Danielle. That's the big thing. But you know what? You have to start working on a plan, because here's what I do know, Danielle, is because I've talked to enough people and seen enough studies that there's a lot of folks out there that are getting ready to retire. Mm-hmm. And they don't have a plan. They don't have an income plan. They've got a nice portfolio. They've got the assets, but they don't know where their income's going to come from. They don't know how long it's going to last. They don't know how much they should take out to make sure that it lasts over their lifetime. Folks, that's why I developed the core retirement design, because that core retirement design looks at those 3 key areas when we're getting ready to retire. Risk. How much risk do you have in your portfolio? Folks, the closer you get to retirement, the less risk you should have in your portfolio. If you're 5 years out, it's time to start planning now. Secondly, taxes. Folks, taxes are the lowest that I believe you and I will ever see. The only way they can go is up, and we want to make sure that you pay the least amount of taxes possible when it comes to your retirement assets. And then lastly, we talk a lot on our show about income. We want to make sure that you have a written retirement income plan so that you know where your income's coming from and that it's going to last as long as you need it to. Again, that's why I created the Core Retirement Design. It's simple. Folks, it's a 30-minute phone call where you can ask me the questions that you want to ask, and I'll make sure that you are on the path you need to be for the retirement you always dreamed of. Simple. Give me a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Don't hesitate. There's no cost or obligation. Take advantage. Call that number, 863-877-1188. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you are paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 270-201-7080. That's VISIT to 270-201-7080.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler. He's the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. Now we're talking about what it looks like creating a 5-star retirement plan. Well, picture a 5-star luxury resort. You have lush greenery, you have scenic views, and top-notch customer service. Now picture a run-of-the-mill roadside motel. Are you going into that? It's a roadside motel, probably is not going to be able to achieve that 5-star rating because I'm sure you know something is missing. Well, look at it like this. If you could rate your retirement plan, how many stars would you give it? So, Philip, let's take this a step further. We're trying to see how ready we are for retirement. And I love this analogy of how can we make sure that our plans have a 5-star rating? What does that look like?
Well, I think that when we look at that, we have to look at 5 main points that I believe that you need to have to achieve that 5-star rating, right? We need to have a reliable income plan that is consistent and conservative. We need to have a wealth management strategy. We need to have a tax efficiency strategy. We want to be tax efficient in retirement. We need to have a plan to address healthcare. And then lastly, an estate planning strategy. What does that look like for you? And I know, I call them stars, but in reality, they're just 5 key components of having a great comprehensive retirement plan, Danielle.
And I love that you listed all of them out for us, Philip. And what I would love for us to do is you make this sound easy every time. So what is the first step when we're talking about building this overall 5-star, but like you mentioned, it's components to an overall comprehensive retirement plan. What is the first step for building a reliable income plan?
Well, I guess you would start with how much income are you going to need, right? In retirement, what does that look like? And I think that there's some misconceptions here because a lot of folks have come to believe that, well, I only need half my income, or I only need, 70% of my income because I'm not going to pay as much in taxes and blah, 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 right? I mean, that's the thinking a lot of people have. And what we are actually finding is that, we really need to come somewhere greater than that number, somewhere probably between 70 and 100% of your current income. And that's really if you're debt free. If you're not debt free, then we definitely need to probably 100%, right? So that's kind of the first thing is how much do we need? And that comes down to what are we going to spend? So we have to kind of put together that budgetary item and determine what our spending is going to look like in retirement. And then from there, we can build the income. Where's it going to come from? How are we going to get it? Where's it going to rest? I use a bucket system where we bucket out money. We got this bucket for a certain period of time, and we've got 4 or 5, maybe 6 buckets of money that we're using to create that income over your lifetime. And so it's just having that process in place to be able to work through it.
Philip, you brought up a good point of making sure we have enough money to last us as long as we live. So what are some of the tools for generating some income in retirement?
Well, I think when we look at tools, there are obviously bank accounts. I mean, we've got Social Security, whether you call that a tool or not. I think it is to the standpoint of when do you take it? You can minimize it or maximize it, right? And that becomes part of the process and the tool part of Social Security. There are things like annuities that were created specifically to help generate income. Now, when we talk about annuities, there's, obviously you draw a little T account, Ben Franklin, and there's positive and negatives, right? So you have to weigh those out to make sure it's going to work the way you want it to, and it's going to add value to your income planning process. A lot of people, they have their portfolios. They have dividend stocks. Some people are just using CDs right now because interest rates are so high. So there's all kinds of tools out there. Some people have rental property, right, that are paid for, and that's generating a lot of income for them. So there's a lot of tools out there. You just got to know how to put those tools to work in your current circumstances. And again, that comes back to the process of why I developed the core retirement design. The core retirement design looks at 3 key components. It looks at risk in your portfolio, and it measures that. It looks at taxes, not just today, but taxes down the road and what that's going to look like to you in your retirement. And lastly, an income plan. Having that income plan in place so that you are confident in the retirement income that you're going to get month in and month out. The core retirement design. Folks, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Again, that number is 863-877-1188.
Philip and his team have been doing this for many years, so they have experience in the questions that you have. They have answers to them, so there's no cost or obligation. All you have to do is give him and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Philip, can you talk about what is the difference between an income plan and a wealth management strategy?
Well, an income plan, Danielle, is setting up streams of income. A wealth management strategy is where do we put those, right? How do we get them? What is a strategy? And I look at more as a risk strategy because when we head into retirement, we cannot afford another bear market like we saw in 2000 and 2008 to wipe out everything that we've worked hard for. And so, we saw a lot of people that their 401ks were cut in half during those bear markets. And if you are getting close to retirement, that's something you cannot afford. And so we look at first diversification. We look at 2 types of diversification. The first type is safety versus risk. And folks, you need both buckets. You need both key components. The question is, how much do you put in each one of them? And that's part of the wealth management strategy, is determining how much goes to safety, how much goes to risk. Then in the risk bucket, you've got to diversify even further. But that's really the wealth management strategy, is where do we put the assets to create the income that we're going to need in retirement?
Philip, you mentioned that word assets, and so it kind of leads me to this question of, should retirees still have a portion of their retirement assets invested in the market?
I believe they do. Now, how much is up for debate, right? So I believe that we start with what I call the rule of 100. And the rule of 100 says, I'm going to take your age from 100. So 100 minus your age gives us a net number. If you are 65 years old, try that as 35%. So 35% is what we would be a starting point, not an ending point, but a starting point of what you might want to have invested in the market. Now, we narrow that down more by doing a risk analysis on you to determine what your risk tolerance number is on a scale of 1 to 100. And we use that to massage that number up or down, depending on what that looks like for you. But that's the key point. And I tell people, look, if you're 90 years old, you still need something, maybe 10% in the market, because that's going to help us continue to grow our money no matter what.
And I know many people have questions about this, Philip. And so it kind of makes me think and wonder, why is it important for our money to keep growing in retirement? Because we don't want it to stop, right? We want our money to last as long as we live. But why is it important for our money to keep growing?
Well, I think, Danielle, if folks think back over the last 3 years, they know why, right? Because inflation, that ugly word, has really become part of our vocabulary, unfortunately, because everything costs so much more now than it did 3 years ago. And so a way to keep up with inflation is to grow our portfolios, to grow our investments to help us through that process of keeping up with inflation. And that's one reason that we look at the stock market, because the stock market historically has helped folks keep up with inflation. And so I know it goes up and down and there's volatility involved, but that's where we have that diversification between risk and safety. And so if we get those allocations done right, then we can handle some of the ups and downs and the volatility that we see in the marketplace. But all of this comes to planning. I mean, that's the bottom line, Danielle, is we have to have a plan. And that plan needs to be written so that you know what it is and you can go back to it and look at it and say, okay, yes, I'm on track. I'm okay. And that's why I developed the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. That's important. You've worked hard to get to where you are, and now you need to be able to enjoy that time in retirement. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to go through our core retirement analysis. Again, that's 863-877-1188. It starts with a simple phone call. You and I discussing where we are, what you need to do, and how you can prepare for that retirement. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188.
Now, you don't want to make any financial decisions without fully understanding the full impact on all of the other pieces of your retirement plan. So do not hesitate to call Philip and his team at 863-877-1188 to learn more about the benefits of having a comprehensive retirement strategy. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Now, again, we were talking about what it looks like planning for that 5-star vacation, because when you plan a vacation, you know how to research flights and hotels and look for all the savings. But how can you do the same thing for your retirement plan? We're going to continue the conversation on what it looks like to create a 5-star retirement plan right after this.
It might ramp up or it could slow down, but inflation never goes away. Do you know how it could impact your retirement savings? Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is more than just convenient, they're knowledgeable and experienced. To set up a meeting with Philip Statler and his team to talk about your retirement plan, all of it, call 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, one stop for a wealth of retirement solutions. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Having that financial and healthcare power of attorney set up is huge. The power of attorney is going to take care of you while you're here alive, and that's why I think it's ultimately important that you get those things taken care of.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back into the show. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We're continuing the conversation of what it looks like creating that 5-star retirement plan. Because, when you plan for a vacation, you know how to research the flights and hotels and look at your savings to make sure you have enough, because you want to make sure you get the most bang out of your buck. But the question is, it's also same thing for your retirement plan. Are you doing the exact same thing? It's important to make sure that you are taking the steps to help preserve your retirement savings. So, Philip, one of the areas where we can really help protect our savings, you mentioned this earlier in the list, is being tax efficient. So can you kind of explain to us the difference between tax planning and tax preparation?
Absolutely, Danielle. So it's really a simple distinction, right? Tax preparation is historic, right? Typically we get to, January, February of the year after, and now we have to do our tax return. So we're looking back to the previous year and we're taking that information and putting it on the tax forms and paying Uncle Sam what we owe him, and we're done. That's tax preparation. It's historic. There's nothing we can do to fix it after it has happened. Tax planning is looking ahead, making adjustments based on belief of what the tax system is going to look like down the road, and not just today. I mean, if we're just focusing on planning for today, it'd be one thing, but we are looking at saving tax dollars, not just today, but over your retirement lifetime. If we can save, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of taxes today by doing something different, doesn't it make sense to do that? And that's part of our core retirement design. In the tax element, we are looking for ways that we can save taxes down the road, not just for our clients, but also for their children, right? Because that becomes important, is how much can we save in dollars over your lifetime and your children's lifetime? And that's the planning process. And that's what we really have to look at when it comes to tax planning.
Philip, I love this conversation because you make it sound so simple for us. So how do you approach tax planning? I would say with the goal that your clients can spend more of their retirement dollars the way that they want to.
So what we look at is, we look at what does it look like now, right? We know that tax rates are today probably the lowest that you and I will ever see. And we know that in 2026, they automatically go up unless some miracle happens, right? Which it could, but is very slim. And so we know that we're going to see some income taxes going up in 2026. And if you follow the national debt and what that looks like and interest rates going up, you can just visualize that the only way to pay that debt is going to be increased taxes down the road. And so, unfortunately, that's the belief of most of us out here, is that taxes are going to have to go up just to continue to pay the bills. And so it may make sense to pay some tax now versus paying higher taxes later. So we look at things like Roth conversions. That's a big deal. Or even just taking some money now and putting it into a non-qualified account, because taxes are lower now than what they're going to be in 2 to 3 years. But it's a process, because there's this little fine line you have to walk between, taking too much and doing Roth conversion and not taking enough. So I believe we should max out our tax bracket. So if you're in a 12% tax bracket, you need to be looking at ways that you can do Roth conversions to maximize that 12% tax bracket. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, we need to maximize the 22% tax bracket because those tax brackets down the road are going to be a lot lower than what we're going to see. And so that's the process. And it's a big part of our core retirement design is analyzing where you are, what tax savings are going to look like for you, and what can we do? How can we plan that out efficiently and effectively to make sure that we're paying the least amount of taxes over our retirement lifetime? The number to call to get on the schedule is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to walk through our core retirement analysis. It's you and me, 30 minutes, figuring out where we are and where we need to get to. It's that simple, Danielle. And it's only a phone call, right? 863-877-1188.
That's right, Philip. We like to remind our listeners that there's no cost or obligation to have a 30-minute phone call with you and your team. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Don't hesitate to call 863-877-1188. Philip, as we're continuing down the list of creating that 5-star retirement plan, you mentioned healthcare. And so that kind of leads me to this stat that I want to share with you that says, according to Fidelity, a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2022 can expect to pay an estimated of $315,000. That's after tax for healthcare in retirement. Now, that is not including long-term care. So, Philip, are retirees even aware that this steep estimate, and how can you help them prepare for that number?
Well, let me break this down in kind of my opinion and the way I look at it. And that's a 2022 number. Believe me, it won't be long before Fidelity comes out with their 2023 number and what that looks like. And it'll be more than $315,000 because I can remember a few years back, that number was $250,000. So obviously inflation is big when it comes to healthcare costs as well as everything else. And so you have to remember that big number is for a couple. So that's 2 people. And that's for your retirement lifetime. If you retire at 65, they're expecting you to live 25 to 30 years in retirement. And so if you break that down annually, it's a big number. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as hard to get your hands around as that huge number they throw out there. It is important to understand that this is why we need an income plan that allows for and gives us some inflation step-ups to help combat things like this that inflation not only does for healthcare, but other items that we have to pay for. And so I think that it's just a process that we need to understand that healthcare is going to cost more and more, and that we've got to plan that and build that into our income planning process.
Philip, what are some of the options for addressing, I would say, potential long-term care costs? Because that number I gave you earlier, it didn't include long-term care. And so what are the options for addressing the long-term care costs?
So I look at long-term care in a couple different perspectives, right? I look at first, because we didn't really have these 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, they were there, but they weren't mainstream, and that's assisted living. And so assisted living is one step in long-term care. But what I have seen, and this is true, I'm going to say in our local market, not necessarily in the Northeast or on the coast of Florida, because their prices are a lot higher than ours are. But a lot of folks in our immediate area actually can pay long-term care as far as assisted living out of their existing cash flow. Yes, is it expensive? It is expensive. But typically, if you have to go into assisted living, you're cutting out other expenses as well. And then there's nursing home. Well, that's a whole different animal, right? And so how do you pay for that? Well, you could buy long-term care insurance, way back when, and that will help offset some of the cost. There are actually life insurance contracts, life insurance that have living benefits that will help cover assisted living and nursing home. And so that's an option. There are annuities out there that have a long-term care benefits where they take your benefit, their account balance, and maybe double it or triple it. There are different things out there, but let me just say they all have pros and cons, and you need to look at them specifically and weigh those things out to make sure that they are going to make sense for you. And then lastly, if you don't do anything, then you're going to be subject to Medicaid is stepping in to help you out. Now, there's ways to plan for that as well. And I'm not the expert, but I have a team of folks that can help us walk through that process as well. So there are different avenues to take care of long-term care expenses. We just need to have the right team in place to help walk through that process, Danielle.
Now, Philip, one of the last items that you had on creating the 5-star retirement plan is estate planning. So very quickly, how does estate planning fit into an overall 5-star retirement plan?
Well, it comes back to beneficiaries, having the beneficiary designations properly listed on your accounts. And, if your estate's big enough, maybe you should have a trust. If it's not big enough, then we need to make sure that we've got beneficiaries on all of our accounts, our bank accounts, our non-qualified accounts. You can add beneficiaries to those accounts, and you need to make sure you've done that to help bypass probate. So that's the thing. The other thing I will say when it comes to estate planning documents is, a lot of people think of a will or a trust as estate planning documents, and they are. But there's a couple other ones that I think are as important, maybe even more important. And that's power of attorneys. Having that financial and healthcare power of attorney set up is huge. And I say it this way, Danielle, because the power of attorney is going to take care of you while you are alive. The will, the trust, you're gone. You've passed away. Now, that may be a harsh way of looking at it, but the power of attorney is going to take care of you while you're here alive. And that's why I think it's ultimately important that you get those things taken care of.
Now, to recap everything that you mentioned, Philip, the 5 ways to create the 5-star retirement plan include a reliable income plan, a wealth management strategy, a tax-efficient strategy, and a plan to address healthcare, and also an estate planning strategy. I know you and your team have done this for many years. And so as you wrap up with us today, how do you help people build a retirement plan that incorporates each part? And what's the best way that we can contact you and your team?
Absolutely, Danielle. So again, that's why I created the core retirement design to help people design all parts of their retirement process. And it starts with risk analysis. How much risk do you have in your portfolio versus how much risk should you have in your portfolio based on your current circumstances? How close you are to retirement? How old are you? These are all important pieces of that puzzle. And then we look at taxes. What do taxes look like for you today? What are they going to look like for you in 5 years or 10 years? We don't know exactly, but we can make some assumptions and plan out what that may look like for you. And then we need to make sure that we've got that income plan in place. And we need to build it to make sure that we're taking care of inflation. Start that process. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Great insights, Philip. As always, I enjoy having this conversation with you. Now, we're going to answer some of our listener questions that we receive every week about all things retirement. So stay tuned. The Statler Financial Radio Show continues right after this.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you are paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 270-201-7080. That's VISIT to 270-201-7080.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Sounds like the mailman's here.
It's time to answer questions from the Statler Financial Mailbag.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. You know, Philip gets questions each and every week about all things retirement. So, Philip, I decided let's go in and, let's check in with our Statler Financial Radio Show mailbag to go over some common retirement questions. Are you ready to get started?
Absolutely, Danielle. Let's see what we got today.
Okay, let's see. So we're going to dive in. We have one from Bill from Avon Park. He says, I'm about to retire and I'm wondering if I should pay off my home first.
Bill, that's a good question. And it's one that's can be easy to answer, but let's talk about it from this standpoint. When we talk about paying off our house, a couple of things we need to know first that I don't have in front of me. And that is, what is your current interest rate on your home? And how much longer do you have to pay it off? And that would be a big deal. And so we would look at that. And then secondly, do you plan on staying here for the rest of your life in retirement? That's something we need to know to understand if that makes sense or not to pay off your house. Typically, though, I would say that if you're paying 3% or less on your mortgage, or even 3.5%, then you probably want to keep it, because typically you should be able to earn more than that in terms of investment. Even CDs right now, you think about, are paying more than that. So there are ways that if you can make more than that, you definitely want to keep the mortgage and not take your hard-earned money and pay it off.
Really good insights there, Philip. And Bill, thank you so much for your question. Okay, Philip, let's see who's next. We have one from Scott from Lake Passett. He says, I've been hearing a lot about Roth IRAs. I'm wondering if I should do a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. Good question.
Good question. Hey, Scott, hold just one second. I want to go back to the other question. It just dawned on me one thing real quick. If you are planning on taking money out of a 401k or an IRA to pay off your home, a lot of times that is not a smart move because of the tax consequences. So I just wanted that just came to me as I was finishing up answering that question. So, all right, Scott, let's talk more about taxes, right? As we move into whether we should do IRAs or Roth IRAs. A lot of that is, what tax bracket are you in? I'm a firm believer. I personally use Roth IRAs. And I'll tell you why, because I feel like right now, we are in the lowest tax brackets that we're going to see, probably in my lifetime. I doubt that we'll see anything lower over my lifetime. So I'm putting money in Roth IRAs. And so I think that makes a lot of sense based on where tax rates are going to go. Now, there are some things that I think people can also start to think about when we're talking about traditional and Roth IRAs. A lot of people have money in their 401ks. They're going to roll those out to their IRAs when they get ready to retire. It's not a bad idea to start running some numbers to see, does it make sense to do some Roth conversions? Now, when you do a Roth conversion, they're not free. You have to pay the taxes on that money that you convert from your traditional IRA to the Roth. So think about that. If you say, I'm going to move $25,000 from my traditional IRA to my Roth IRA, right? I'm at a 10% tax bracket. Well, I can expect I'm going to have to pay at least $2,500 in taxes on that transfer. That may even push you into a higher tax bracket, which would push you up even higher. So you have to run the math. It's one of the things that we do in our core retirement design is run through a whole Roth scenario to see what the timeline would look like for folks. Because it also affects taxability of Social Security. If you do too much, it can make your Medicare premiums higher. There are all kinds of landmines out there that you got to be aware of when we start talking about Roth conversions, Danielle.
You know, Philip, I know a lot of retirees have questions about this, so definitely don't hesitate to give Philip and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that's 863-877-1188. Philip, thank you for those insights. Okay, let's dive into our mailbag again. We have another question from Dan and Sally from Sebring. They say, I'm tired of being a landlord on my properties, but I'm not sure if I should sell them. So what are some of the pros and cons to renting out property as a supplement for retirement income?
Well, I would say let's start with the first part of your question here, because here's the deal. I kind of agree with you. It's easy to become tired of being a landlord. I was one for a while, and I don't think I'll ever be one again. It can be a problem, and I get that.
Right.
But here's what I want you to think about. Is the property paid for? I mean, I probably have more questions that need answers than before I can really tell you what direction to go. But here's some things to think about. Is the property paid for? If there's no mortgage on the property, then it's pure, rent money coming in. Granted, you still got to pay property taxes, you got to pay insurance, and obviously you got to maintain them. But it would be nice to know, if they're paid for, that poses one issue. Because rental income is a nice cash flow, right? It's good. It's got good taxability. It's, it can be not all taxable. So because you got depreciation of the house. So there's some neat things there that you can do with real estate. Obviously, when you sell it, you have to think about the capital gains you're going to have to pay. What's that going to look like? What's it going to put you in a different tax bracket? How's that going to affect the taxability of your Social Security? I've had people sell property and all of a sudden their Medicare premiums skyrocket because that's income. And it plays a role in the how much they have to pay in terms of Medicare Part B premiums and how much of their Social Security ends up being taxable. So it's not just a simple, should I sell them or should I keep them? If you're tired of the landlord deal, there's always a management company. Hire a management company. Let them manage it. Let them take the headaches. Mm-hmm. It costs you a little bit of money, but if there's no mortgage and they're positive cash flow, that might be the answer to your question there, guys. Take a look at that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like we need a little bit more information. But Dan and Sally, we definitely appreciate you entering your question. And it's a great opportunity that we got to answer it here on the show. Okay, next question comes from Jane from Sebring. She says that I've heard that when you delay Social Security, your benefits grow at 8%, which sounds pretty good to me. So should I just let my Social Security grow since it's a sure thing?
Well, yes and no, because I don't know your exact circumstances. So it's hard to say, yes, that's the thing to do. Here's what I will tell you, though, Jane, is that you are correct. If you wait past your normal retirement age, which is for most of us 67, then you'll get an 8% increase in your Social Security for every year you wait past 67. Now, the opposite is also true. For every year that you take money out or start drawing Social Security before you reach that full retirement age, you lose sometimes even more of that. It can be 10% that you can actually lose that Social Security benefit. So, I say that it's part of our income planning process is we have everybody get us a copy of their Social Security statement. And it's easy to do. Just go online to ssa.gov and pull your own Social Security report. I mean, I did it just a couple weeks ago to see where I'm at, see where my wife is, and so that we can start looking to see what does that look like for us down the road. And it gives you what your Social Security will be at 62, what it's going to be at 67, what it'll be at 70. And so that's important things to know when you start the planning process. And again, that's why I created the core retirement design, and the income portion of that is really to help you determine when's the best time to take Social Security.
That's right. And Phil, we're going to spend a little bit more time on that core retirement design at the end of the show. Let's get to one more question from Joyce from Zolful Springs. She says that I've had this life insurance policy for a long time, but now that I'm retired, do I still need it? Great question, Joyce.
It is a great question. And again, unfortunately, I have to say it depends, right? It depends on your circumstances. If you've got sufficient retirement assets, then maybe you don't. But there are some in some life insurance policies that actually will provide, if they have cash value, they may actually provide a retirement income for you. So we need to take a look at that aspect as well. Some life insurance also has long-term care benefits. So we need a little bit more information to really understand if it makes sense for you to get rid of that life insurance policy. Typically, in retirement, folks don't need it, but a lot of times you're to the point you have a paid up policy anyway, or close to paid up policy. So, it makes sense to give tax-free money to your beneficiaries, because life insurance will be tax-free to your beneficiaries. And so that's a key component that a lot of people forget about, is the taxability or the lack of taxability on life insurance policies. So that's a good benefit to have.
Philip, I know many retirees have questions about all of these different topics that we're talking about today. And with the remaining time that we have, I want to spend a little bit more time on this core retirement design that you and your team have crafted, specially and specifically for retirees. Tell us what's inside.
Absolutely, Danielle. So our core retirement design, we worked hard to build this out. And so it starts with risk. How much risk does your portfolio have? And how much risk should it have based on your risk tolerance, your risk number on a scale of 1 to 100? Where do you land? How close are you to retirement? What's your age? And so those things all go into consideration to determine how much risk you should have in your portfolio. And I will tell you this, Danielle, of all the folks that I've met with, I'm going to say probably 60% of the folks I meet with have too much risk in their portfolio. There's another almost 30% of the folks out there who don't have enough risk in their portfolio. So it's not there's people that don't have enough. And there's about 10% of the folks out there that have about the right amount of risk in that portfolio. So the second thing we want to look at is taxability. What do taxes look like in retirement? We want to do our best to reduce your long-term tax obligation for you, your spouse, and your beneficiaries. So we look at that component. And then lastly, we look at income, because income creates a confident retirement. And so we have developed a written retirement income plan that shows us here's where the money's going to come from. Social Security, pension, and here's the amount we have to make up. Here's what it looks like. Here's where it's going to come from. We look at buckets and what bucket money's coming from when. That's our core retirement design. When it's all put together, folks are confident about their retirement. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to start with your core retirement analysis.
Philip, I always appreciate our time together. You always make retirement planning sound so easy, so thank you again for your time today. Now, if you have any questions about retirement, again, do not hesitate to call Philip and his team at Statler Financial Services. They are here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, do not hesitate to call Philip and his team at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Now, thanks again for tuning into the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll catch you next week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.